Are you voting your values? Does your vote actually represent your beliefs? Does your vote support your self-interests? Does your vote represent your vision for America? Billions are spent to influence your vote because your vote counts. Is the integrity of your vote worth a few minutes of your time? Take this simple test to find out which political party platform you align with more closely. First, number a page from 1 to 8. Place a check by the numbers that correspond with statements with which you agree. Place an X by the numbers that correspond with statements with which you disagree. Fact: voter suppression in the form of stricter voter ID laws or reducing the time for early and absentee voting has prevented or discouraged thousands of primarily poor and minority voters. Fact: voter ID fraud has been subjected to comprehensive investigation. Going back to 2000, of more than 1 billion ballots cast, only 31 separate credible incidents of voter impersonation fraud were identified. Assertion: voter ID restrictions solve a real problem and are not simply an attempt to suppress the vote for political advantage. Political party position: I support imposing more severe voting restrictions. Number 1. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. Fact: the Affordable Care Act allows parents the option to keep their children covered under their health care plan until age 26. The Affordable Care Act keeps insurance companies from denying coverage to people with pre-existing conditions. Fact: the Affordable Care Act makes it illegal for insurance companies to impose lifetime or yearly caps on people with catastrophic illnesses or to arbitrarily cancel your health insurance because you are sick. The reduction in the uninsured brought about by Obamacare has predictably led to a decrease in the number of people turning up at hospitals with no health insurance and no means to pay for their medical care, and that decrease is more substantial in states that allow their poorest residents access to Medicaid coverage. Political party position: the Affordable Care Act should not be repealed. Number 2. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. Fact: 17 million children live in minimum wage households. In the 60s, the minimum wage was high enough to keep a family of 3 out of poverty. In the 80s, it was high enough to keep a family of 2 out of poverty. Today, the minimum wage leaves a parent of 1 child working full-time in poverty. For a long time, as our country got richer, both investors and workers made more money. The pie got bigger, and we all got a little more. But now, the benefits go to those at the top. Elizabeth Warren. Fact: the minimum wage is no longer a living wage. Without other sources of income, people cannot make ends meet. As this is unsustainable, taxpayers carry the burden of subsidizing these households through social benefits, effectively subsidizing the businesses that employ the workers. Assertion: raising the minimum wage is good economics. People have more money to spend, which boosts business and propels the economy forward. People are better able to provide for themselves, and fewer will need government assistance, such as food stamps, to feed their families. Political party position: the minimum wage should be maintained at $7.25 an hour rather than raised to meet the rising costs of U.S. household expenses. Number 3. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. Fact. The Citizens United ruling has frequently been criticized for letting the wealthiest have too much influence on the political process. Supreme Court Justice Stevens wrote that it threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. Fact. This landmark decision allows billionaires like the Koch brothers to bankroll candidates who support their interests with corporate money rather than deplete their own personal wealth. They are further shielded from having to attach their names to the campaign ads they buy. Assertion. Unlimited speech shifts power to an elite few and has greater potential to corrupt. The vast amounts of corporate money being poured into political campaigns drowns out the voice of the individual and therefore tramples on First Amendment rights. Political party position. Protect our democratic process and repeal Citizens United. Number 4. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. Fact. 2/3 of food assistance recipients are children, elderly, or disabled. 62% of families receiving food assistance are employed. Facts. ExxonMobil received $6.2 billion in tax subsidies in 2010 through 2012. General Electric got over $3 billion in federal tax refunds from 2008 to 2012. Facts. Cost to the average taxpayer per year for food assistance is $36. Cost to the average taxpayer per year for corporate subsidies is $870. Assertion. Costly programs such as paying able-bodied people not to work has created a culture of dependency. Charles Koch. Political party position. Given a choice, I support cutting food assistance over cutting corporate subsidies. Number 5. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. Fact. The U.S. corporate income tax rate of 39% is the highest among developed countries. Corporations and the ultra-rich routinely hire lobbyists, high-end accountants, and financial planners to exploit tax code loopholes. Deductions and exclusions result in the significantly lower tax rates they actually pay. Fact. Since the 1950s, corporations' share of the burden has plummeted, while contributions from workers' payroll taxes have dramatically increased. Working Americans pay a higher proportionate share in taxes. We're going to close the unproductive tax loopholes that allow some of the truly wealthy to avoid paying their fair share. Do you think that millionaires ought to pay more in taxes than the bus driver or less? Ronald Reagan. Political party position. I support reform of the U.S. tax code that closes corporate loopholes and more fairly distributes the effective tax burden among corporations, the ultra-rich, and working Americans. Number 6. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. Fact. Among developed nations, the U.S. accounts for 30% of the population, but 90% of firearm homicides. Americans are 20 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than people in other developed countries. Fact. If today is an average day, 277 Americans will be shot with a gun. 84 of those shot will die. There have been at least 74 school shootings since the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in 2012, where 20 children and 6 adult staff members were killed. There's no reason why on the street today a citizen should be carrying loaded weapons. Ronald Reagan. political party position. Further gun legislation tramples on our Second Amendment rights to self-defense. Number 7. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. Assertion. Climate change is a hoax. There is actually no evidence of significant global warming or of the degree to which the dramatic increases in carbon production by humans contribute to the problem. Fact. Global warming is a conclusion based on observations of a great many global indicators. These trends are reported on by the most reputable and globally recognized experts on the subject, including NASA and the CRU. Assertion. New carbon regulations will increase electric bills by $17 billion every year and potentially put an average of 224,000 more people out of work every year, claims House Speaker John Boehner. The assertion is based on a study that claims Obama's proposed regulations will kill jobs, raise electric prices, and hurt the economy. Fact. PolitiFact rated the statement false, indicating that the study's authors stated that these numbers do not apply to the regulations proposed by the Obama administration. There are already more American jobs in the solar industry than in coal mining. Political party position. There is overwhelming consensus that global warming is real and man-made. Legislation needs to be put in place to reduce carbon emissions. Number 8. Place a check if you agree. Place an X if you disagree. How to score your answers. All even-numbered statements represent current predominantly Democratic positions and voting agendas. All odd-numbered statements represent current predominantly Republican positions and voting agendas. More checks in the even-numbered position statements mean you align more closely with the Democratic agenda. More checks in the odd-numbered position statements means you align more closely with the Republican agenda. Integrity. Firm adherence to a code of moral values. Your vote counts. Your vote is your voice.